What's that in the air? Is it a bird, a plane? No, it's a giant kaiju the size of a skyscraper coming down. In the new anime series Kaiju No. 8, Japan is beset by dangerous monsters that never let up. In fact, in this world, Japan is known as Kaiju Central. So it's pretty much Japan in every monster verse. They fly, they swim, and they crawl on land. No one knows their origin or why they keep attacking humanity. But regardless of how and where they come from, most of them end up in an early grave thanks to the efforts of the defense force. A specialized military force with unique battle suits and weapons, they slay kaiju day and night and are the only ones standing between Japan and absolute ruin. Since the first season had just ended and the second one was recently announced, I've decided to give you a recap of season 1, starting with the first arc, in case you didn't have the time to watch it or just need a refresher. Starting with the first arc, otherwise known as the man who became a Kaiju Arc. The series opens with a giant kaiju descending upon Yokohama. It's sure to cause a lot of destruction. Oh, never mind, it gets taken out almost immediately by the defense force, or more specifically by Mino Ashiro, one of the prodigies within the defense force. You may think the story will be following her. Well, you're wrong. We'll be following this goofball here known as Kafka Habaino. But here's the thing, Kafka isn't a member of the defense force. He isn't an emotionally charged teenager with a secret hidden power. Instead, he's a cleaner, or a kaiju cleaner to be more specific, and he's 32 years old. For once, most of the manga/anime audience can finally connect with someone, and not have to obsess over a bunch of kids. Seriously, it's always weird that kids are always the ones saving the world or fighting all the demons. Anyways, when the defense force is done killing kaiju, it's the unsung heroes like Kafka who need to step in and get things back to normal. This is certainly a unique POV, one that we've never really seen before. A POV of the average Joe, like you and me. While the defense force receives praise from a grateful crowd, the cleanup crews get to work. Of course, this job isn't pretty, but it sure pays well. The cleanup crew gets dirty in the muck, and one even gets burned when he touches the wrong part of the kaiju's body. You see, just because the kaiju's dead doesn't mean that they can't kill you anymore. Unfortunately, our hero Kafka gets the worst of it when his supervisor tells him to go work on the intestines, one of the worst jobs around. Back home, Kafka finally gets a chance to rest and watches a prodigy Mina on TV. Turns out that Kafka didn't always want to be a cleaner. He wanted to be part of the defense force and wanted to stand by Mina. Turns out that Mina, the defense force prodigy, is a childhood friend of Kafka. When they were young, they both promised each other that one day they would stand side by side and kill the kaiju together. But for some reason, she made it while Kafka got left behind. Might be because Kafka's kind of a beta. One of the main themes that we see in this series is about people desperately trying to meet the expectations of others, to do their duty, serve their nation, and appease their families, to rise above their limitations and achieve what is believed to be impossible, to never give up and be valuable to those around them. Most of the time, it's not really about their personal desires, it's simply about appeasing others. Throughout this entire series, we see characters who think lowly of themselves and constantly try to change that. And they don't think lowly of themselves because they personally are dissatisfied. No, instead they think lowly of themselves because they feel like other people around them are dissatisfied. On the next day, Kafka runs into a new employee at the office named Rino Ichikawa. Turns out that Rino wants to join the defense force. One of Kafka's co-workers mentions that Kafka tried to join but failed. He explains that he's too old to try again, but Rino disses him by calling him a scrub loser and says that he'd never do the same. Once back at the kaiju cleanup site, both Rino and Kafka get assigned to the intestines. Later on, both of them have trouble eating their lunches. Kafka offers Rino some vitamins and nose plugs to help him cope. At the end of the day, Rino thanks Kafka for his help and tells him that the defense force has raised their maximum age limit to 33, letting Kafka know that there's still a chance that he could get in. A loving and peaceful moment. Oh, never mind, a kaiju comes out of nowhere and tries to eat Rino. Kafka saves him and tells him to go get help. Meanwhile, Kafka tries to hold off the kaiju and remembers his old memories with Mina. Right before he's about to get eaten, Rino returns to help him. Eventually, both of them are rescued by the 3rd Division of the Defense Force. Without them, they both most likely would have been killed. Mina looks at Kafka like the beta that he is and walks off. Eventually, both of them end up in the hospital and thank each other for the help that they provided. Within the first few pages, we see a major change in Rino. He goes from being silent and dismissive to being very supportive and open and kind of vulnerable. One of the things in this story is that characters will have massive character development in one episode or chapter and then stay the same for like 10 volumes. It's kind of weird, but let's get back to the loving and peaceful moment. Oh, never mind, a kaiju comes out of nowhere and enters Kafka without consent. Rino hears the screams of Kafka and opens the curtain dividing them, but he doesn't see Kafka anymore. Instead, he sees a monster. Kafka himself is transformed into something else. They scream and an old man calls the defense force and both of them jump out the window to escape. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Mina is taking a bath but she receives a distress call. Getting back to our duo, Kafka and Rino are making a run for it. While all of this is going on, Kafka keeps transforming into horrible abominations. He eventually starts peeing from his nipples. Well, I guess now we know that his lower parts ain't gonna need to be censored, because he doesn't really have anything down there. By the way, I just want to take this time to appreciate how beautiful this anime is, and even the manga itself. It looks good and the movements are smooth. When the character designs were first released released for the anime, people thought that it would look like crap, but I can say that it's pretty good. Production IG doesn't miss, and neither does the author of this series. Anyways, eventually Kafka realizes that perhaps with his new power, he can finally join the defense force. But Reno reminds him that the force will most likely kill him. Soon after, he notices another kaiju nearby, attacking a mother and her daughter. Kafka comes in and punches the kaiju into a different world. He tries to comfort the child, but can't because of how ugly he is. Afterwards, the kaiju comes back for round 2, but this time Kafka punches him with all his might and makes it rain blood, giving us serious one-man punch vibes. 3 months later, the defense force has named Kafka's kaiju as Kaiju No. 8. Kafka's form is so powerful that he gets his own unique designated number. I guess he ain't a beta anymore. Both Reno and Kafka then receive letters showing them that they passed the first part of the entrance exam for the defense force. But this isn't really good news for Kafka, because he usually fails at the second part of the exam. Reno fears that Kafka might accidentally transform during the test, but Kafka assures him that he can control his release. A few days later, Reno and Kafka head to the testing site, where they come across another examinee named Kikuro. She calls Kafka an old man beta, and tells him to move his van because she wants his spot. Spot 55 is important to her because 5 is her lucky number. Kafka refuses, so she starts to strip and reveals her power suit underneath. She lifts the van and throws it aside. I hope he had assurance for that. She then turns to Kafka and notices that he smells like a kaiju. While Reno is explaining that they smell like kaiju because of their jobs, Kafka uses his kaiju strength to lift the van back straight up. Kikuro wonders if Kafka has his own suit, and Kafka finally introduces himself and tells her to remember his name. Kikuro tells Kafka that she's gonna make a fool out of him. Reno then explains that the test has 2 stages. One is fitness, and the other is aptitude. The fitness is straightforward, but the aptitude is a wild card and changes from year to year. During the fitness portion, Kafka ranks in the bottom 6 due to his poor physique and overall chubby figure. Kuro quickly comes by to let him know that he's a loser in case he forgets. While this is happening, Mina and Shushiro are going over the examinees. They discuss some of the other characters as well that will be joining Kafka in his journey. These are the rich and intelligent Haruchi, the hard-headed Aiharu, and the strong Aoi. Of course, Kikuro is at the top of all of them with their skill, the true alpha in this competition. They eventually get ready for the aptitude test, and it turns out that for the last 2 years, it's been all about kaiju disposing. Finally, Kafka's job will come into use. Finally, he can ascend from the beta hood. Also, this is the reason why Reno joined the disposal company in the first place. He wanted to get some experience, hoping that it will help him in the test. But before Kafka can stop feeling like a loser, Shushiro reveals that the test is actually about kaiju neutralization, something that Kafka is not ready for. Now the recruits are given their power suits, which increase their strength and speed and are made from kaiju fibers. Each user has an unleashed power amount, which dictates how much power they can get from the suit. The higher the better. Reno has an unleashed power of 8%. Aiharu has 14%. Aoi has 15%, Azuma has 18%, and the prodigy Kikuro has 46%. Shushiro looks on as impressed by their numbers and states that only those that have 0 could possibly fail the test. He comments that he's never seen anyone with a 0 before. Meanwhile, Kafka comes in with an amazing 0%. Once again, breaking barriers. The test then begins, but the participants are warned that if they're about to get killed, their shields will be activated and they will fail the test. Kafka realizes that he ain't killing anything and instead will try to get points by providing support by using his knowledge of kaiju. Throughout the test, he provides support and tells other people of the kaiju's weaknesses, hoping to get points by assisting. Kafka even uses a stun grenade on a kaiju knowing that it has a sensitive hearing, but before he can celebrate, he's grabbed by another kaiju. Kafka is about to get killed and have his shield deployed. Again, this means that he will fail if that occurs. However, before that can happen, Kikuro comes in with a save. Kafka is warned that he has suffered multiple injuries, but he decides to continue. His boy Reno tells him that he's got his back, so Reno picks him up and Kafka piggyback rides him like a monkey. However, the remaining kaiju are killed by Kikuro, and the exam ends before Kafka can really do anything. He's failed again, most likely. Well, I guess that's the end of the manga. He tried, and then he failed. Like most of the people probably reading this manga. Again, another thing that they can relate to. Kikuro at this point decides to find Kafka and make fun of him again, but before she can do anything, something appears behind her from the dust. He points his finger to give her the touch, and pierces her through the chest. While Kafka and Reno are recovering from the exam, they notice that the kaiju around them are being resurrected. Meanwhile, Kikuro is barely holding on, and notices that the new kaiju that just appeared is speaking. The mysterious kaiju that we know as Kaiju No. 9 turns around and shoots her again. Mina and Shushiro watch in shock and decide to head down to kill the kaiju who are not just resurrecting, but are far more powerful now. They order the participants to evacuate in the meantime. Kikuro is barely hanging on and refuses to flee. She has a flashback about her daddy problems and how she needs to be perfect and appease her father. However, her efforts fail, and just as she's about to be killed, Kafka appears, in the same way that she appeared to protect him. Kafka then transforms and gets ready to face off with the resurrected kaiju, while Kikuro looks on in complete shock. After he transforms, Kafka begs like a sissy for Kukuro not to reveal his secret kaiju powers. The last thing he wants is some deep probing. Afterward, he turns around to fight the kaiju. Meanwhile, back at HQ, the defense force picks up a large new kaiju signature, one of the largest that they've ever seen at the location of Kafka and Kukuro. Shoshiro and Mina are surprised and believe that Kaiju number 8 might be connected to all of this. Kafka realizes that he needs to end this fight quickly and decides to borrow from One Punch Man and destroy the kaiju in one punch again. Another smaller kaiju appears as well, but it doesn't put on much of a fight. Kafka smiles at Kukuro but warns her to be more careful. Reno appears and slaps him on the head and advises that he take the advice as well, and scolds him for transforming in public, warning him that the rest of the defense force would probably try to kill him. While all this is going on, Kukuro faints from exhaustion. I just wanted to take this time to appreciate the animation of the anime and the drawings in the manga. They're simple, clean, and just pleasant to look at. You know exactly what's happening and it's very easy to follow. Something that can get a little bit more confusing in other action manga, such as Attack on Titan or Demon Slayer. Yeah, Demon Slayer's manga is very messy, to be honest. Now this chapter is by far the most interesting of them all. We are first introduced to Kaiju number 9, who serves as the main antagonist. We don't really know where he comes from or what exactly he wants at this point, but we do know that he can resurrect kaiju, is more intelligent than any seen before, and can speak. Only time will tell what he's truly planning and what he's capable of, but if he can bring kaiju back to life, this will certainly be a game changer. Mina and Shoshiro look over the training grounds and are completely confused about what just happened. Shoshiro begins to point out similarities between the current attack and the appearance of number 8, and believes that they might be connected. Kafka and Reno find themselves back at the hospital again. One thing that I've been wondering is that why didn't anyone realize that when Kaiju number 8 appeared at the hospital, it appeared in the same room as Kafka and Reno, and after the monster fled, there was no trace of Kafka and Reno either. I do wonder if anyone makes the connection between the disappearance of Kafka in the first hospital and the appearance of number 8, but I guess that doesn't really matter. But I guess the anime and manga probably won't even address that. I guess it's not really important, and we simply need to move ahead for convenience sake. Kafka then thanks Reno for supporting him and pushing him to be better. At this point, Mina arrives and thanks him for their service and for saving Kukuro. She then immediately leaves like she did when she first saved Kafka. Later that night, number 9 sits on a toilet stall and listens to the news and realizes that his KD ratio kinda sucks. No one died during the attack. Well, at least the main bad guy is also kind of a loser like the MC. He then gets a call from his boss who scolds him for sitting on the toilet for far too long. Again, another thing that the older audience can relate to. He then transforms into a human and goes outside to join the Monster Sweeper Inc. crew, the same crew that Kafka works with. They then walk off to clean some kaiju. Okay, now we know that number 9 can transform into a human. First, we have a human that can turn into a kaiju, and now we have a kaiju that can turn into a human. Things just got a little bit more interesting. Could the powers of number 8 and 9 be connected? Can't say for sure, but number 9 is a much bigger threat than anticipated. This also makes one wonder whether there are other kaiju that have disguised themselves as human and have infiltrated human society. Could they have infiltrated the defense force? Not sure, but I guess it'll be something that will be revealed soon enough. And could be a very interesting plot point, having traitors within the ranks. Kafka thanks Reno for giving him the push that he needed, essentially changing his life. Kafka for once is hopeful and confident, or maybe not, because immediately after that he starts to freak out and blames Reno for encouraging him. Why? Because they finally got the test results, and we're going to see if they pass or fail. But before we can see the result, the story skips to the officer induction ceremony. Kukuro is announced to be the highest performing officer and is thanked by Mina for her efforts at saving everyone's lives. Of course, Kukuro knows that it was Kafka who came in to save everyone, the same Kafka that is now nowhere to be seen. Right at that moment, Kafka strolls in like a gazelle and apologizes for interrupting. Turns out that Kafka failed both portions of the exam. He would have failed again if it wasn't for the intervention of Shoshiro, who praises him for being a comic relief and for his performance during the field combat exam, and offers to train him personally as a cadet in his platoon. At this point, it seems that Kafka has become a literal clown in the story. The rest of the cadets are surprised by Reno, and Kukuro smiles at his arrival. Kafka and Mina lock eyes like long-lost lovers, which they kind of are. Mina then warns them that they might die terribly and to trust her with their lives. Kafka then, like the idiot that he is, addresses Mina by her first name. Everyone is flabbergasted, and Mina makes him do 100 push-ups. When she leaves, she lets out a smile. This is quite impressive, because usually she comes off as stern and stoic. Shoshiro then bursts into laughter, and it seems like the class clown is already paying dividends. At this point, we learn that Shoshiro wants to keep Kafka close by, because he suspects him of being something else, such as having some sort of relation to Kaiju number 8. Regardless, he plans to get to the bottom of it. This is the last chapter of the arc, and overall pretty relaxed, with very little story development. 2 months have passed and the recruits are practicing their shooting skills. It seems that everyone has become a little bit more competitive and has been growing their unleashed power. Even Kafka increases his strength to 1%, but Shoshiro warns him that if he doesn't improve at a higher rate, then he'll be discharged from the force. Later on, the boys are enjoying a bath together like real men. Aiharu and Reno get into a match on who has bigger muscles. You know, guy stuff. Kafka eventually gets his fat ass out of the water and shows off his guns, only to expose his beer belly. But of course, they're all outdone by Ao, who comes in and shredded. Aiharu, realizing that he's been outdone, decides to change the subject and asks the others why they joined the defense force. He personally wanted to join after being inspired by Mina. Kafka tells his motives and that Mina and him were childhood friends. At this point, everyone wants Kafka to tell him everything that he knows about Mina. They end up spending a little bit too much time in the sauna and are laid out on the floor outside. Later on, Kafka decides to stay up late to study and try to improve himself. After all, if he doesn't improve, he'll be discharged. Shishiro at this point appears and talks with Kafka. He tells him how he knows how the Kafka wants to be by Mina's side. Shishiro, by the way, is Mina's second in command. It turns out that the conversation in the bathhouse was monitored. Shishiro tells him that Kafka will have to replace him if he wants to get to Mina. At that point, an alert for a kaiju attack starts to sound. Shishiro tells Kafka to get ready for his first mission. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. The complete summary and somewhat analysis of the first major arc. This series is everything. Kaiju killing, interesting characters, clean action, and enough mystery to keep you theorizing. A lot of people have also praised the MC for being 32 years old. A nice break from the usual 15-year-old protagonist who you get in most of the series. It allows the older fan base to connect with the character, someone who has to deal with the adult world, with things such as a full-time job and responsibilities. I think I'll do a summary of every arc in the first season eventually, but I hope you enjoyed this in the meantime. Overall, the manga and anime are great, and I highly recommend reading and watching it. The anime is very good, and the adaptation even adds scenes that make the story more meaningful and improves character moments. Let me know what you think about the series below in the comments. In the meantime, I'll be working on my next video, where I discuss what I think Kaiju number 8 is really about. Anyways, have a great one, and see you next time.